All right. Yeah, really excited to be here on stage. Thanks a lot, Johnny, for the introduction. And also from my end, welcome to SafeCon, and thanks for joining me here on stage, Stani.
Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, adding to what Johnny said, Stani is the CEO and founder of AAVE, and under the umbrella, there's different projects. There's DeFi with AAVE, with Go. There's a decentralized social with Lens, and then also the rather recent, compared to the others, acquisition of a wallet family. And I think there's two main reasons why this chat should be interesting. One is you're a long-time builder in the space, so I hope we can learn something of what has changed over the years. And the second one is you're building in two different verticals, which on first glance seem rather different. One is decentralized social, and then there's DeFi as well. So I'm really looking forward to learn something on the similarities and the differences. And then, leading up to my first question is, Safe is all about ownership, all about enabling ownership. And could you share with us some insights on your experience, how it was building in early DeFi 2017, how it was, how did people think about accounts back then, and what has changed comparing to how it is today?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things changed over the years. So I think I started thinking about and building AAVE, or what was before AAVE, ETHLend, short for Ethereum lending in 2016. And I do think that back then building decentralized applications was way harder than it is today. Just from the tooling perspective, the wallet experiences, and overall kind of like the user expectations of what is a great experience. So I think over the past years, things has evolved quite significantly. I think just key management has improved, wallets have improved, and the tooling around how you can build very quickly a very functional decentralized application is getting even easier. Something that still hasn't improved, obviously, is that a lot of these apps, especially in DeFi, they still look quite shit in terms of design, but I think that's kind of like the next wave of improvements that we will see. But I would say that now it's actually quite a cool time to build not just DeFi, but anything in Web3, because there is so much tooling around what you can actually build, and it's much more easier. So you can actually you can focus on areas that you want to solve, and just in the stack that is more easier to manage, and you can progress much more faster. So now it's kind of like an amazing time to actually build as well.
Got it, yeah. The user perspective is something I want to dive into a little bit later, but from a builder perspective, Ethereum launched with this, vision or specs even, that accounts should be first-class citizens, right? Smart accounts, I'm sorry. Historically, I would say it hasn't been true. Like EOAs have been preferred for UX reasons, but maybe just from a builder perspective, where do you think, like, are we yet there? Are smart accounts really first-class citizens? Do you think the space is building with that in mind, or if not, what's missing?
I do think that that kind of a mind shift happens from developers. So one kind of like a big change, at least the way we think about when we were building on AAVE or for example on Lens, is that we're now thinking quite a lot from the perspective of smart accounts. And with AAVE as an example, with a new version that we're looking to build, AAVE V4, the whole concept is around also how do you manage your positions through smart accounts and smart wallets, basically. So it's definitely starts from developers, and the same thing is in Lens. So Lens as a protocol, and the identity piece is tokenized, and it's basically a lot of the functionality that you want to have on that identity can be managed on a account level with a smart contract-based wallet, basically delegations of actions and arranging, for example, recovery or other types of features. Just as simple things as gas management and payments for gas. So I do think that if you're a builder today, you kind of have this perspective of how do I build my product in smart wallets in mind and get most of the benefit and how that fits into my application. And something that is really interesting is that it really depends on the use case that you're building. So with smart wallets, what you can actually do, it really depends on what you're building and what features you need to implement. So I think this shift is happening at this point. And that's how we think, for example, when we build.
Understood. Recently, the team announced the plans for AAVE V4, and as part of that, I saw that there's a plan to introduce smart accounts, vaults, and could you elaborate a little bit on, why that is? Adding to like what you've just mentioned, like what wasn't possible maybe with V3 or previous versions, plus. If you can, could you dive into like where do you see the limit or the border between like the account, really more like the wallet type of account, or where does the protocol start? Because some of the features that protocols need, like the badging and maybe even like sponsoring gas, like this is what smart accounts offer, but obviously also what protocols want. And so if they implement it, sure, then maybe a more wider user group or account group could tap into it. Hence, yeah, I'm really curious about your thoughts on how you think internally at AAVE about this. Where does the smart account end, and where does the protocol start?
That's actually a really interesting question, because I think a lot of developers are also thinking about the same question. So for example, that like what is the core essence of the product or protocol you're building, and what part like you basically can find a solution on a kind of like a wider Ethereum stack. And with AAVE V3, obviously we started to build it roughly 3 years ago. So it's done really well in terms of like the market share. It's grown over the years significantly. It's now the biggest lending protocol. But there's certain types of functionality that is kind of missing there, and everything is built around the idea of your actually address as the main identity. And what's important for us is that when we think about what's the core of the AAVE protocol, it's the lending pools and everything associated to that lending functionality, interest rates and liquidations and all these supply, borrow, repay mechanisms. And we were thinking about with V4 from the perspective of how we actually also cater for new types of users that, for example, they don't, like how we can actually remove some of these steps that we have today when we interact with DeFi. How do we abstract away the concept of gas and paying transaction fees, how we can improve the user experience, and how we can enable better recovery, as an example. And one AAVE specific important functionality is that how you can segregate different positions with the same actually account and creating sub-accounts. And I think we were in the same actually a place as we saw earlier presentation from DeFi Saver, where they actually went from DS proxy into using Safe, and we were in the position of thinking like, what infrastructure are we going to use to solve this problem? And from our perspective, Safe is already something that is used very widely. It's securing billions worth of value, and it seems to be like technology that can be plugged in relatively easily, and adding just that AAVE type of lending and borrowing functionality. So obviously that's the kind of like a core how we think about like where the protocol ends and what are these additional features that can actually be added.
Mm-hmm. And what about cross-chain capabilities? So because looking at smart accounts versus EOAs, the portability cross-chain that is the killer feature of EOAs. And quite frankly, at Safe, we haven't yet built a sufficiently good solution to allow cross-chain smart accounts?
Yeah, I was hoping that you will solve that.
Got it. Okay, so it's just a task for us, I guess. Cool. Then maybe transitioning into from DeFi more into the decentralized social space where you're building. From a builder perspective, how does building with accounts differ between DeFi and decentralized social? Yeah, maybe that's already.
Yeah, I mean, in DeFi, you're always transacting with value. So you're building a financial infrastructure that is securing billions worth of value. You have to ensure the highest diligence of a financial system, and it's really hard. I'm being very surprised how far we've been able to build DeFi, not just in AAVE, but in general in our space, because some of these protocols that are very resilient and have been operating over the years has been actually proven that DeFi is a really superior financial infrastructure. And just to give you a little bit of an example, when we started building ETHLend back in the days, we chose to build in a more decentralized, non-custodial way. So we were big believers of decentralization and betting that blockchain in Ethereum is the technology where you can build the future of the financial future. And at the same time, we saw a lot of centralized service providers or businesses offering quite similar model as what we had in terms of earning interest, lending as an example. So some of you all remember BlockFi, Celsius, Salt Lending, and all these bigger companies that raised a lot of funding and got a lot of customers, a lot of assets under management. And end of the day, for a full market cycle, what actually happened is that these DeFi protocols outcompeted in their resiliency and functionality. So DeFi was able to actually liquidate all the positions without leaving any kind of like a big bad debt in the ecosystem. And that's really important thing to think about when you start building something in Web3 is that like what is your approach towards like the decentralization and non-custodial approach, and tools like smart wallets actually enable you to build something that is decentralized but extending a user experience that is really approachable for more mainstream and building towards that direction and abstracting a lot of the complexity away. And that's the kind of like a part where we're thinking on DeFi side. So it's very financial, securing a lot of value, and need to be very diligent and as transparent as possible. When you're building social, it's a different kind of a problem to solve, and it's a problem that relates to social capital. And I think there's a lot of people that have financial capital, but there's every single person in the planet that has social capital. So basically, that's the identity that you have and expand, and the network that you might be creating, or the content that you might be producing and sharing. And social capital is really interesting because it really has value. And you can even lose that value for a moment. So, for example, that if you have an account in a social media platform, and I don't know, you abandon the account, but you have your identity, known identity, you can recreate that value relatively easily. So, in DeFi, when you lose, let's say, your key, you pretty much lose the value of those balances that you have. But in social, you can recreate that value in the follower base and whatnot. And the fundamental interesting challenge is that how do you ensure this ownership in social that we create, for example, with Lens? So you own your identity. We also have the follower graph on chain, which means that all these followers and connections that you're making, you truly have that ownership there as well. So, and all these ownerships are tied to on-chain representation of NFT as an example. Let's say your Lens profile. So the storing of that profile is very important. And the way we think about it is that you can store your profile, for example, in a in a cold storage or a safe, for example, but you can delegate all these functions into a more robust wallet, or delegate those actions to an application that is signing these transactions behalf of the user. And most importantly, abstracting all this complexity and blockchain pieces away. So if you use one of the apps on Lens, Orb as an example, you are essentially delegating all the social actions into the app, and the app basically does all the transactions, and you don't really know or feel that you're using the blockchain. And I think that's the kind of like a difference between what we are trying to secure as an ownership of between in DeFi and in a social context. But both have the kind of like a same roots towards what you actually own as a user. And I think actually securing social capital is far more challenging, because social capital exists in different forms. And that's the interesting part. And by the way, Orb is a great example where they're actually using Safe for all these actions that they're creating for the users when they create their Lens profiles and delegate those actions to the app to ease the user experience.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Like this, what you mentioned, that these two different points between like ensuring that the user really owns their, I guess, identity or assets on the one hand side, but then also abstracting away the technical complexity of blockchains. Like this is really a fine line in order so you really like get the best of both worlds. And there's many challenges that smart accounts have, or accounts generally have in blockchain. One of them, if not their main biggest challenge, is recovery. And it is already important in DeFi. You know, you don't want to lose your assets, but then the problem doesn't get smaller when you think about identities. You don't want to lose that either. How you think about this in the context of Lens protocol? How to enable, like, still enable, you know, true ownership, but then also ensure that there's one hopefully convenient and viable way to recover in case something happens.
Yeah, I mean, like in DeFi, if you lose your account, you kind of lose everything, right? So there's little chances of being able to recover all the assets, because you have to go to the issuers of those assets, and some of them are, for example, immutable, or they're too big of actually doing any kind of recovery. On the social side, the worst thing that can actually happen is that, let's say that if you truly lose your Lens profile, you can just spin up a new one, signal that this is actually me, disregard the old one, and you have signals from other people from your network that are signaling that that's your new profile. So that's the interesting part about this whole concept of identity around social, because there is a way to recreate, but it's a lot of work. It's equals to actually recreating your whole profile, and the kind of like the same thing that we're trying to go away from into traditional social platforms, where you have to recreate your account every time you go into a new platform. And that is something that basically Lens is solving, is that you have the identity portability, so you can go from one app to another, and you don't need to recreate your social account from that perspective. But I do think that the recovery mechanisms that are, for example, in DeFi and social, they can be applicable the same way. One interesting thing, obviously, is social recovery, and that works really well with social context. And then also like build recovery services by these applications that are building on top of Lens. They can actually, with the onboarding and experience and offer actually recovery service. So I do think that the applications are the social apps that are that build with Lens. They're the closest places and entities to offer a recovery service for something like social accounts.
Interesting. Yeah, the part about social recovery. Like I always thought in a you know, traditional wallet context, when it's mainly about DeFi, like social feels not natural, at least to me. Usually, I don't share details of my bank account with, you know, my social circles. But now with the social, like a decentralized social network, for sure, it comes much more natural. So hopefully, there's something to leverage. Looking at the activity on these decentralized social networks. I think it has been increasing. I saw there's more than 350,000 accounts on Lens, millions of interactions. Also, Forecaster has been gaining some traction. What is, like, when will crypto Twitter move over from X to Lens? What's missing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, because I think like Twitter has strong network effects, so it's really hard to go and kind of like recreate a Web3 Twitter and just try to vacuum, even if the incentives are high. I think at some point people will go back to Twitter, and I think Twitter is going to be more powerful down the line because of the AI, and they get stronger network effects with the new experiences as well. And I personally think that the right approach to build social is to create new social spaces for us, all of us here, and also to create social spaces to new audiences and new generations. I do think Twitter will exist here for quite a long time. And I do think like a lot of people will be in Twitter from our space as well. And I think it's interesting, like crypto space, it moved from different discussion boards to Reddit at some point and more in Twitter. But that's why we also see in Lens, for example, the newer experiences like, for example, Orb, they feel something a little bit different. So Orb, for example, just to give you an example what Orb is, it's kind of like if Instagram and Twitter had a baby. So we see this type of a remix culture now in applications that are being built. And I think the next wave is building even more novel use cases. And I think that's actually a really good thing, because building these new social spaces actually helps us to create not just new experiences, but new communities and also new rules. And with things like Lens, we want to make it as easy as possible to build them, and entrepreneurs and founders and teams to come actually and build and try different kinds of concepts multiple times. Because with social, it's always hard to tell what kind of experience is really exciting and sticks and has retention. And I do think like crypto in general has a retention challenge. So it's not only related to social. So it's very easy to acquire users, but then having that retention is more difficult. And that's why we have to go more for a bigger scale and mainstream. So most importantly, we have to have an infrastructure that scales, and that's what we are doing with Lens, with the Lens network, and the work we are doing with ZK Sync on setting up a Validium that enables Ethereum settlement and at the same time mainstream scalability with low costs. And tools like Safe, for example, we were able to abstract a lot of the user experience, abstract the blockchain away from the users. And these are the tools that we can actually go to mainstream and build social experiences that have that blockchain on-chain component in the background, and enables that ownership and enables tokenization, monetization streams as well for the users, but they really feel like normal applications that you will be using day to day. So at this point, I would say that social is still small, Web3 social, but once we have this infrastructure angle solved and experience angle, we will see actually applications that are targeting directly not just the crypto audience, but more the mainstream audience.
Understood. Now transitioning into looking at all this even more from a user perspective, an increasing number of big players in the space built their own or acquired wallets. Uniswap, Coinbase, 1inch, now most recently also like Avara. So DeFi generally, or I guess blockchains are all about modularity, interoperability, and there's this meme of the money Legos, but it doesn't really seem to work on a wallet level. I mean, Safe isn't any different. I mean, there's Safe Wallet that is currently for a specific user group the main interface for the Safe Smart accounts. But yeah, basically, I'm wondering, why do you think, why is that? Or also, what was the reasoning for you, for Avara specifically, to bring family under its umbrella, as opposed to maybe collaborating more closely with any wallet?
Yeah, I mean, in generally speaking, we collaborate quite a lot with pretty much all the wallets. We've done it for quite a long time. We believe, for example, Safe is going to be it's going to have a lot of consumer angle, a lot of institutional angle, and that's a kind of like a area where we are collaborating quite a lot. And with family, what we're doing actually, we're taking more mobile approach and more approach towards newcomers into the crypto. So newcomers, they really need an experience, design, and basically a wallet that is really easy to use. And that's basically the vision of the family team, how to design a wallet that is really good interface for the blockchain, mobile first. And that's why we think that we can't really, we can't only serve the crypto audience from our stack, from Avara. We have to go to new audiences and find new users and bring them into the space, because anything we do with family, that basically supports the whole ecosystem. So it's a very design-driven wallet that focuses on being a very delightful interface for the blockchain. And at the same time, we work with everyone and try to empower, especially on the DeFi side and also on the social side too.
I would still say like the wallet landscape at least seems pretty saturated. There's probably some other mobile wallets which have the same goals to have like really, integrated user experiences. But it seems to me maybe we haven't yet, or these wallets haven't yet found the right trade-off between abstracting things away and yet still ensuring transparency. Maybe making it more specific. Like, what do you think? Like,
I think when we think about wallets in the space, we think about like what are the technical kind of like challenges, experiences we can solve. Like we think technically, and the reason for that is that we've breed a community of engineers and technological enthusiasts in Ethereum and mainly in Web3. So what is really missing is that kind of like a design angle. So people who think about how do we actually solve this from design perspective. It's a design issue. It's like the experience and the design aspect. So it's less of a kind of like a how we solve this technically, because I think we're doing that really well now with the account abstraction and what Safe is doing. But what is really missing is the talent that is focusing on design and bringing products that are competitive of things like Apple has built in the past and up to date, and that kind of a design experience is really important, because end of the day, the mainstream will rate us based on the experiences that actually they have used to with these bigger applications. So I think that's where we're focusing on family and bringing more design culture into the Web3.
Got it. And yeah, my concluding question would be one that's more about the outlook, your view on things. Like, it's not a 5-year, 10-year outlook, because I feel there's so much happening. It's a little bit too far away. Maybe on a time horizon of 2 years. What do you think? What's your prediction on how accounts, how wallets will evolve? I think you already touched on some things with like family and the design aspect, but taking this into account, generally, accounts, wallets, where will we be in 2 years, or where will we have to be?
Yeah, there's a lot of low-hanging fruits now that should be like really much fixed. Like switching wallets, that should be like switching the networks is something that should kind of like be in the past. Wallets should recognize already like what network you are and what you need to interact with, and abstracting away a lot of the blockchain is going to be very important, but in a way where users understand what kind of transactions they're doing, what they're putting into risk. And obviously passkeys is going to be a big driver. I've seen a lot of integrations of passkeys also in DeFi, which is kind of interesting because if you will try to do this maybe like year or let's say a couple of years ago in DeFi, there will be a lot of resistance. So it's nice to see that in our community we're seeing that how much the experience matters and what you can actually do when you don't have to operate in a non-custodial way and writing all those seed words and whatnot. So I think that abstraction is going to happen now in the next year or so. I think also there's going to be a lot of institutional adoption on the DeFi side. That's really interesting. And a lot of application layer is going to be more consumer ready from the scalability perspective and also better middleware stacks that you can actually build very fast consumer applications, and you don't really need to deal with the blockchain complexity. So at least those things are in my mind when I think about the next couple of years.
All right, thanks for sharing. Let's see what the next 1 to 2 years will bring. Yeah, with that, I think we can wrap it up. Thanks a lot for chatting with me here on stage. Yeah.
Thank you so much.